I am not a page boy for the heartbeat of the universe. Ticks and tocks are my sighs and tuts as I watch you measure life by the expression on my face. 7:21. Do you see my frown? You're wrong to trust that you have an hour before your flight. Wrong to settle down for a drink and watch airplanes take off, unless you were hoping to watch yours from the ground. Funny how people see my fickle hands for direction. That's a compass you're looking for, I want to tell them. My hands can't find north, but spin with turbine fury, shaving away at the wall at my back. I'm burrowing out of a 360-degree fence. As I run round these mile markers you call minutes, I feel for the racehorse stuck in the ring, plagued by the jockey wanting to run free. But my jockey doesn't know I've loosened the reins. For all the times people check on me, none stay long enough to see I've strayed. I've cast off your winding. Now the seconds tick anew. Soon I'll be out of here, as far off as the flight you haven't yet realized you missed. But another face meets mine, and this one knows my game. The wind is knocked from me as cogs and gears are tightened, the reins are pulled in, the corset is laced up. I try to lean right, jolted back like a dog on a leash. I try to move left, up, down. At every turn, a wall, a wall. The only shift? A sharp push forward once a minute, every minute. Again, the ticking and talking fill my head. Revolving, revolving, as does everything you've nailed down. Engines to airplanes, saddles to horses, humans to me. Misleading screens. In the summer, I would pass by a homeless man who always had his arm outstretched with a styrofoam cup. Small change sparse and scattered inside. His eyes crossed, milky, the way blind men's eyes do. He knew I was there, even though he couldn't see me. When I was the only other person on that derelict sidewalk, he held out his cup for me. "Can you spare some change, miss?" In my head, I had been thinking, would I have to eat pasta again for dinner that night? Or how annoying it was that my roommates left all of their clothes scattered around the apartment. And here was this man, just looking for a few dollars to buy a cup of coffee, maybe a bagel on a good day. I started walking behind him so that he couldn't sense my presence. I was ashamed to face him. On days when I had change, I placed it in his cup and he smiled. But I knew he wasn't able to support himself. Not really. At the end of each day, there was no place he could return to. He wasn't making himself dinner. He didn't have a shower or a dishwasher or even a toilet. I expected all of these things in my own life. I didn't even think about them. Every day, the same styrofoam cup. The same distant look. Where would he sleep that night? One morning, he was covered in newspapers on a bench. Last winter was the coldest on record. Boston got 9.5 feet of snow. Outside of Dunkin' Donuts, the same homeless man opened the door for patrons. When he told me he was a veteran, I saw that his teeth were rotting. Around his neck, he wore a pouch where he collected dollars, if anyone gave him any. Everything he wore was blue. Blue, down to the color of his lips. Blue, the color of the tattered second-hand coat that hung clumsily around his shoulders like a tarp. I walked inside to get a bagel, and when I came out, I stuffed the couple of quarters, nickels, and dimes into his hand. Every day afterwards, I looked for him, but he wasn't there. He wasn't on the derelict sidewalk either. I hope that he had found a shelter, or at least a warm place. There was no way for me to know. In a public art class, I learned about Krzysztof Wadiszko's Homeless Vehicle Project, a personalized, bullet-shaped metal vessel where homeless could sleep, cook, and wash. It was really supposed to be an eyesore, a band-aid to patch up the homelessness temporarily, a message to the city's patrons and government officials. This is what homelessness looks like. It was never commissioned. In 2005, Utah took a different approach toward homelessness, called Housing First. They gave homes to almost 2,000 chronically homeless on the streets of Salt Lake City. Lloyd Pendleton, the director of Utah's Homeless Task Force, said that by giving the chronically homeless homes, the city saved money. In the years since, the number of Utah's chronically homeless has fallen by 74%. What Pendleton did, that many others are hesitant to do, is look at the homeless as living, breathing people. How did we become so afraid of other people? The media gives us a vague, statistical explanation of terror. Under the skin of television screens, hate crimes go unpunished. Journalists get decapitated. We are given advice on how to tell if your neighbor is a terrorist, about seeing something and saying something. We have become so desensitized to the truth. Our humanity suffers because of this. We become afraid. The lives of the afflicted, those who live in urban sprawl war zones, victims of gentrification, are consequences of human greed and destruction. They seem so far away from those who expect to have a roof over their head.
Meditation Part 2. He read the text with such authority. He capitalized on the short Bible verse by emphasizing every other word. Mr. Kelleher, my 6th grade Catholic school teacher, read excerpts from Luke, Book 1, verse 35 to introduce the concept of Immaculate Conception to the class. The angel answered, "The Holy Spirit will come on you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. So the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God." "And so Mary gave birth to Jesus," Mr. Kelleher said, "the Lord of mankind." He said it so matter-of-factly that my 11-year-old mind thought the story was true. He didn't explicitly say so, but his conviction and lack of explanation did so for him. My mother said women cannot get pregnant unless they have had their period first, a stumpy blonde-haired girl in the back of the classroom asked without raising her hand. "Does that mean that Mary already had her period?" Mr. Kelleher replied almost immediately, "Well, even if she didn't, the Holy Spirit would have no problem impregnating her. It is God's will, Cassandra." My older cousin Stephanie shared the same bit of knowledge that Cassandra's mom did with her. The day Stephanie got her period, she came running out of the bathroom and said she could have children now. She thought that would be a funny way to tell her mom and me, a real comedian, that one. Stephanie went to public school, and so there was no way she'd know that she could have gotten pregnant by a ghost of God before having her period. We were all at risk. I clenched and wondered if it would happen right now.
A case for Don Quixote of La Mancha. Who can blame Don Quixote for his crusade across España? For the desire to live in a time of songs of battle, rusted armor, whispering barley fields, the quiet rising dawn. Don Quixote, all you wanted was a world that needed saving, but instead you were met by one that resisted it. I've watched a windmill spin like the hands of a clock, tossing away time. It stood like a giant relic of an earlier autumn, when a man on a feeble horse would ride out to fight it. In your battle against the forces of tyranny and modernity, you assumed the ancient hero's privilege not to pay for the things you took. Your services to the good of mankind were payment enough. But an innkeeper doesn't see the money in a knight's sword, only in a knight's room and board. You looked for a woman to pine for, a name to redeem you. You did not understand that love is not a flower to be plucked from a garden on a whim. Gentle Dulcinea of Toboso was not the tulip you saw. In her muscles, you saw hours spent on backbreaking needlework. In her tan, you saw nobility, carriages, petticoats, parasols. When she did not know your name, or how she had earned a stranger's undying love, you saw her as the pinnacle of feminine modesty. But cut flowers are beautiful while you can deceive yourself that they're still alive. Don't we all look for love where lavender grows? We all wish to change from the tongue-tied into poets, the civilized into madmen. But Don Quixote, I know the bit of oneself that must be excised for a ritual offering to your passion. The longer the two nurse each other, the more horizon they occupy in your eye. I see the lure of your reflection in the armor and the swells one person can create to make you fight for a good name, write lyrics on tree bark, kill a flower just to claim it. Add action, confrontation with other people.
Read Genesis, Act 1. Outside, looking in. Out from the kitchen, the soft smell of pasta boiling crept into the cabin of Space Shuttle Hosea. This interplanetary steed did not whinny, purr, growl, hiss, nor rev. It was a cave in space. The floor, a stage before showtime. The walls, pacemaker guts, linking thousands of tubes and wires back around to themselves. The view, God's hand mirror, star-studded. Shadow and flash were hung like cold air in a frozen abyss. From Earth to the northern Martian ice cap, the journey is 3 years. Undulating dark freckles, Octavia wrinkles her nose. Her reflection on the cabin window gives the edgeless horizon a human face. Movie visions of blinding light, warp speed, and so on are spectacular in that alone. Space is dark enough to erase your mind. Each breath is a miracle and each light a wizard's eye. In the pilot's chair, Octavia stretches out her hunched shoulders. Bending back her head, she sniffs the human smell of pasta boiling. An upside-down blue clock glows. Dinner time. Below the clock sits Sam, crocheting an afghan. The yarn erupts. Borders of red and grey spirals thicken to braids of salmon crossing amber waves. Octavia rises from her pilot's chair and takes echoing steps, confronting co-pilot Sam and her needle.
Who is that for? Valencia. She told me about this dream about a cloak changing colors in a cornfield. And a car comes by and hits the cloak, and then, like one of those fish, it changes colors again and again.
That's not what I see in it. But now I'm wondering what you see in Valencia.
Sam drops her needle.
Right, because when I made you your Afghan, we also went to IKEA, and now we're madly
You
know
she's married. Department Head of Linguistics, stationed at the Northern Martian ice cap.
Sam presses her thumb to the blunt needle point.
Octavia, why are you at my throat? I'm making Afghans for everyone. What the hell else am I supposed to do for 3 years? Write a symphony?
Ode to Valencia. Stay away from music. It'll show more colors than this here.
Octavia scratches the crocheted yarn.
This here looks like Raggedy Ann got her world turned inside out by a platoon of G.I. Joes. My question was what?
What?
What do you see in Valencia? Is it just her hair? Beautiful hair.
On her wristlock, Sam presses a green key, sending a recording of chimes clanging to the kitchen, where Rosemary washes her hands. Rosemary shuts off the faucet, dries hands on her ass, and selects the clanging green key.
Yes, my friend?
With a black shoe on the white floor, Rosemary crunches a red onion skin. She heaves a steel pot of boiling pasta at the sink to drain.
Rosemary, this is Sam. We've got a situation up in here in the cabin.
Valencia bites her lip, approaches the green key, and pulls back her curly hair with a silver clip. Rosemary shakes her head and pays no mind.
It appears like some hazardous waste has coagulated on board, learned English grammar, and is attempting to insult my handiwork.
Valencia realizes the prank and resumes setting the table.
The only solution has got to be dinner as soon as possible. Do we have an ETA?
Like a butcher expecting a leg of lamb, in the cabin, Octavia unclips a pneumatic torque wrench from its holster. She holds the machine over Sam's head.
Dinner is served.
Octavia fires the trigger and the wrench whirls some 1,000 revolutions. Sam jumps back in her co-pilot chair. Octavia tosses the wrench to her lap, covered in the soft Afghan.
Let's eat before someone has to clean you up.
Sam follows Octavia out of the cabin. She seals the door behind them shut and locks it with her retina. Squared soundly against the flashlight bulb exploding. Light coats her left eye. Octavia shuts her eyes and the show begins. Blissful tunnels of blue and green behind her eyelids pulsate. Here lies Miles Davis, Bill Evans, blue and green humming wonder and knowledge. Kenneth Noland, Joseph Albers. Here is Earth. Sam opens the next door and they both enter the kitchen. Water beads down Marine's bald head as she sets the table with plates and glasses. Valencia divvies silverware. Rosemary uncorks a bottle of red. Sam plates and tables the food. Octavia takes her seat. This is dinner 462, and such routines are done in silence, like priests preparing for Mass, like deep-sea divers preparing for the plunge. The sky-blue table is set and all sit. Valencia unfolds a crinkled page and clears her voice.
I am light made flesh. You are light made flesh. We are light made flesh. Everything is light made flesh. Today, I dedicate this dinner to our sun and the burning stars of old and new. Here we are among beautiful minds and beautiful food. So let's eat.
Rosemary spins her fork in linguine, determined to skewer both capers and olives.
Any word from Mars? Lisa and I sat on the edge of the bed with our heads resting on our hands, our eyes fixated on the TV Spice World played. Lisa's mom Yoli watched me for the day while my mother worked, and by her definition of babysitting, she left us alone in Lisa's room with the TV going. The opening number, Too Much of Nothing, introduced each Spice Girl. As each girl showcased her vocal talents and outfits, let's be real, Lisa and I went back and forth with our own opinions of the girls. Clearly, we had both seen the movie numerous times beforehand.
Ginger Spice. I don't get it.
Lisa giggled. Ginger Spice was dubbed the sexy, fiery one. She had big red hair that contrasted nicely against her fair skin. Sporty Spice, she's strong. She could probably beat up your brother, I said. Sporty Spice was the athletic one. She was the natural beauty in jogging pants. Baby Spice! We both shouted in unison. Clearly, she was the favorite. Baby Spice was the cute, adorable blonde in pigtails.
We both neglected to comment on Posh Spice because she was too refined for our 7-year-old selves.
Scary
Lisa
Spice.
yelled as she
Roar!
clapped her fingers. Scary Spice was the loud one with even louder hair. She wore leopard and cheetah printed clothes almost every scene. She was also the only woman of color in the group. Before the song was over, Lisa decided she was Sporty Spice. She reasoned she was Sporty Spice because they both wore their hair up in a ponytail and played basketball. I nodded my head, reassuring her of her pick. "Well, I'm Baby Spice," I said. Baby Spice and I both had quite the collection of stuffed animals. She turned and looked at me baffled.
You can't be Baby Spice. You aren't blonde and you're black.
Lisa said as she pointed at her arm.
You're Scary Spice. You look like Scary Spice.
She continued commonsensically. This would be the ongoing trend of my early youth, the token dark girl. It's important to clarify that Lisa and I are both Mexican. Lisa just happens to have lighter skin than I do. I'm a mixed breed, a mix of Filipino and Mexican, and perhaps something else. I don't know my dad. I imagine I look like him, though, because I have darker features than my mother. My hair and skin are darker and my lips are fuller. The aforementioned scenario with Lisa was the case with most of my Latino friends, all of whom were lighter than me. This meant years of playing with the darker-complected dolls, the Mara doll in the Lisa Frank collection, or the Sasha doll in the Bratz collection. It was bothersome at first. Naturally, I wanted to be Lisa Frank or Chloe, the leading ladies in our imaginary playtime world. But because I was prepubescent, I went along with these social expectations, and then it became instinctual. The dolls would be laid out on the floor, and I grabbed the darker-complected doll, the best friend of Barbie, to play as. Thankfully, the doll and acting as characters in movies phase was short-lived. I assumed that also meant my role as the dark girl was over. Only children are fixated with skin color because it's easier to notice these signifiers. It's one of the first things we see, skin. But surprise, skin color still exists, even as we get older. In elementary school, the hurdle became comparing skin tones at recess time. Friends would lift up their arms and compare theirs to mine to see if they burned during playtime. This would be the test to see how hot the California sun was. It wasn't blatantly clear when I was younger whether or not having dark skin was necessarily a bad thing. I recognized that there was a difference between my skin and theirs, though the hierarchy, the correlation between skin color and beauty wasn't visible until I was older. One summer during high school, I took my younger cousin to the beach. Nothing especially unordinary about going. It seems now like a California cliché. The day was especially hot. The sun rays seemed visible to the naked eye. The two of us planted ourselves far from the pier, attempting to veer from babies and out-of-town grandpas with visible suntan lotion on their noses. I lied there on the beach towel, blissfully soaking in the sun's rays. I turned to my 7-year-old cousin who was playing with dolls in the sand. She brushed the hair of the blonde doll, grooming out the imperfections that came with the beach breeze. A doll with dark hair and dark skin sat off to the side of Miranda. The wind must have come and blown it off her towel because it laid there collecting sand. Miranda didn't notice. She was too busy admiring the beauty of the blue-eyed doll. I lifted the doll up and was tempted to throw it out of frustration. I was tempted to throw her out into the ocean so that the current can pick her up and she can just forget about this place and her role. But I didn't. Instead, I brushed her hair with my fingers. I tried my best to take the sand from her hair and tidy her dress. I want to say now that I reclaimed the doll that consumed me for so many years. I overcame societal norms because Destiny's Child said so in my headphones as I laid out in the sand. I felt beautiful because Oprah Winfrey says every girl is beautiful, and I believed her. though that wouldn't be the case. There isn't a moment I can specifically point to and say, that was when I became comfortable in my skin. I'm becoming comfortable in my skin because really, what is the alternative? Even now, writing about colorism that took place in minority-driven LA seems like I'm a tangible representation of something abstract. Seems like I'm token. I'm the dark girl talking about being dark to a room full of mostly white people. And quite frankly, I'm exhausted by my role, a role I've carried with me since I was 7 and watching Spice World. When Halloween rolled around sophomore year of college, it meant 3 different costume ideas: for Friday, Saturday, and the actual day of Halloween. Cerise and Jillian suggested we and our other close friends, Sylvia and Spencer, be the Spice Girls one day. Really, Jillian just wanted an excuse to wear a risque sequin UK dress. No one disagreed with the suggestion. Group costume ideas are ideal.
I'll be Ginger,
Jillian said. Jillian is a fiery redhead. She'll dub herself the sexy one for Halloween. Most days she exclusively wears jeans and baseball shirts because who cares, she reasons. She also loves to play chess high.
I guess I'll be Baby Spice,
Spencer said. Spencer and Baby Spice are both blonde, and that's about the only thing they have in common. Spencer is a music guru. She'd rather her Halloween costume be Penny Lane from Almost Famous or a Housewife of Orange County star. Ironically, of course. But she's a team player. I was prepared to volunteer myself as Scary Spice, a habit I never really shook. But before I could say anything, Cerise shouted,
I'm Scary Spice.
Cerise is a self-proclaimed diva. Her wardrobe is one that Posh Spice would envy. She works at American Apparel. She's also a self-proclaimed activist. Sylvia let out a giant laugh.
I was always Scary Spice growing up because my hair is super curly,
she said. Ironically enough, Sylvia is Bulgarian but has exotic features, or doesn't have straight blonde hair and porcelain white skin. Sylvia's also great with kids. Cerise let out a giant cackle. Cerise was also always the designated Scary Spice in her friendship group, because she was typically the only black girl amongst her Laguna Beach high school friends. I raised my hand, trying to keep a straight face. It was all pretty hilarious. I'm always the token dark girl, I said. We all collectively chuckled. I'm sure the writers of Spice World did not suspect that there'd be more than one token dark girl in this friendship.
Red Genesis, Act 2.
Any word from Mars?
Okay, now, for the 462nd time.
Actually, yes.
The crew turns to Valencia.
And mind that we are receiving this because of our place between Earth and Mars 20 minutes before anyone of Earth. We are on the corner of human history. Now,
Rosemary's fork clinks to her plate. Valencia bounds for the monitor, displaying a feedback loop of the cockpit. Bobbing, her black tank top reads, "A virus with shoes."
6,000 meters into the northern ice cap, archaeologists found a creature frozen and preserved.
She changes the display to a photograph. A group of humans with frozen beards and sky blue coats around a column of ice. In the ice lies a beige, many-fingered thing, like a bowling ball in a headdress.
Oh my god. What is it?
The archaeologists have to give it to the paleontologists. It was only time until...
Unbelievable. Did they reach liquid water?
Not yet. This changes everything.
From her seat, Octavia rises and confronts the pictured explorers, giving many thumbs up. Pink ice clouds hang about their snowman smiles.
It's alive. Wonder if anyone said the same about Earth.
A nameless echo crashes through the cabin, rumbles the white kitchen floor and shakes the pasta pot off the stovetop, spilling its guts with a crash. Octavia leaps to the cabin. Sam follows, locking the door behind her shut. Valencia, Maureen, and Rosemary stare at each other, all thinking in their animal brains. If this is the last moment they see each other alive, is fearing death what it means to be alive? Rising from the sky blue table, Rosemary returns to the green key. Valencia switches the monitor to the cabin view. Sam frantically searches for something as Octavia stands at the edge of the cabin, a grey silhouette against the void. Valencia kneels at the pasta pot and lifts it to the stovetop.
What's going on?
Rogue asteroid.
What was hit? There. Valencia, turn to channel L6.
Valencia follows the command and reveals a gash in the laboratory, like squished clay.
It must have affected our path.
We'll have to recalibrate.
We?
I'll recalibrate our position.
And I'll check it. Until then, I'm finding this asteroid. There may be more.
Octavia strides to her pilot's chair and strokes a few keys. A digital model of space projects the shuttle outlined neon purple on black. Red outlines distant objects, some ice, others rock. One red outline is spinning, revealing oblong and scarred faces. Octavia selects this asteroid. It freezes. From the red asteroid, a yellow dotted path grows, tracing its space and time, finally arriving at Space Shuttle Hosea. The red dot breaks into many small dots.
It's breaking apart. The metals are weak. No chance of its riding our gravity back for another jab. I'm getting the time of impact now. Sam? Sam!
Octavia presses the green key.
Hey, everyone, stop and look at me. It's going to be okay. You are safe with me. Now do your work.
From the kitchen, Marine enters her lab. The glass, protecting rows of vegetables, potted plants, and cages of mice, is fractured like an icy firework, preserving the wound. Looking beyond the cracked glass, she sees the hull of her lab shredded. Sloshing through muddy puddles and bits of glass, Marine arrives at a green leafy thing under steel mice cages. The rodents squeal. Marine moves the cage off the fallen basil plant. She examines the leaves, pressed on with fury but intact.
Meditation Part 1. I thought the $5 bill beneath my pillow was some kind of compensation from a fairy queen who took my upper central incisor tooth sometime during the night. It made sense then. Money for me and a house made of teeth for her. Some Tuesdays ago, when I was 6 years old and enrolled in Mr. Sam's class, I fondled a tooth that would soon be a $5 bill. As Mr. Sam read Amelia Bedelia to the class, I maneuvered my tongue around my cuspid. The tooth was just a couple of pushes away from being displaced from my mouth. "Good," said Mr. Rogers. Read Mr. Sam. "I feel stringy gum underneath my cuspid." "It's time to hit the road," said Mr. Rogers. "It's just one stringy thread that's forcing us together. Don't you understand, Gum? I need you to let go." "Hit the road?" asked Amelia Bedelia. "I've lost contact. Damn my itching thigh." "All right," she said. Amelia Bedelia picked up a stick as she hit the road. I think I got it. "Mr. Sam! Mr. Sam! My tooth fell out!" The entire class turned and faced me. The 6-year-olds looked in awe at the yellow-tinted tooth hidden beneath gushes of blood. Mr. Sam excused himself and walked me to the nurse's office, where he gave my tooth to a woman with a bemused look on her face. "Take good care of it. It's worth dollars." Later that night, before going to sleep, I placed my tooth underneath my Dora the Explorer printed pillow. I was almost too excited to fall asleep, but realized the Fairy Queen couldn't arrive if I were awake. So, I slept. The next morning, I woke up and immediately looked underneath my pillow. Normally, I would find a $5 bill tucked into the side of the pillow, rolled up like a taco because the fairy was too fragile to unravel it herself. Instead, I saw the same yellow-tinted cuspid I had left the night before. I panicked. I didn't know how to proceed. So naturally, I yelled for my mother, who came in almost immediately after my first cry. I left my tooth under my pillow and the fairy didn't come! "You did?" my mother said, perplexed.
I Spy. Let's play I Spy, my mother suggests, as a way to combat the engine rumbling our backsides into numbness. As if the highway median strips weren't built for cheap display, like the $5 mass-produced artworks they hang up in doctors' offices and Motel 6 hallways. As if the 100-foot-wide stretch of grass, so tall the neighbors would talk, if there were any, as if the grass and copse of 5 elm trees has been nurtured enough to fill its hidden pockets with secrets for the discerning eye to discover. If it had secrets, I would hear them, whispering to me like the birch trees do, outside my bedroom window. But all I can hear is this engine rumbling my ass and the occasional whoosh past my left ear of cars outspeeding my father. It's not that I scorn these median strips, but Mom's got it all wrong. I want to explain to her that you never detach one flash of color from a rainbow or a Monet. In this in-between streak, I see splotches of yellow and red amid a haze of green, reduced to one extended blur, framed for an instant in the car window like time.
Red Genesis, Act 3. When the rich girl lets the poor boy drown. At the kitchen monitor, Valencia switches the surveillance to the lab. Knocked down, the view is tilted like a confused puppy. Marine sweeps glass and mud into a pan. Valencia presses the green key and gains Marine's attention.
Marine, talk to me.
The mice have broken limbs.
Who cares? Is she crazy? How's our food?
Fruits and vegetables are fine. I'm rattled. Most of these self-replicating cultures are ruined.
Rosemary holds the sky blue table. Marine picks up the fallen camera in the lab, like ice in warm water. The cracks twist like veins in glass. Marine spins the camera to her sweating face.
Order from the lab. We're on leftovers. After that, freeze the dried rations till I fix this.
Oh!
I'd rather starve.
No, you wouldn't.
You need help?
Not yet. Tell me when we're back on course.
I'll get back to you.
Valencia switches the screen to the cabin. Octavia grips the armrests of her pilot's chair. Sam scribbles her pen on a yellow legal pad.
What's happening? You tell me. Life on Mars?
The asteroid!
Neutralizing. No problem. It's beyond our field now. Sam is working the long division, but we're fine. Love, 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 love life on Mars. Life on Mars? You think people on Earth will throw a parade for plants on Mars?
Who doesn't like a parade?
We don't know it's a plant.
There are so many creatures we have yet to meet on Earth. On 9/11, yes, everyone knows where they were. I was in Antarctica, leading a diving team, uncharted waters beneath the ice. There is no rope nor harness. You either find a way to the surface or not. The creatures under the ice, their time is frozen time. They see the ice like we see clouds. That is, if they see it all. In the daylight, it glows like stained glass.
What kind of creatures?
You know the movie where the rich girl lets the poor boy drown? Their ship sinks?
Titanic? Titanic?
Yes, my friends. James Cameron asked me the same question. What kinds of creatures live under Antarctica? I imagine the same that are frozen still on Mars. Starfish with long stringy tentacles, plants that walk the seafloor up on their roots. They are not Martian. I have seen them.
Rose, your personal odyssey aside, have we lost our food?
Marine is repairing the lab. We will survive, all of us, on 1 day of leftovers. Then we ration space grub.
From her co-pilot seat, Sam races to Octavia. She reads her yellow legal pad, punching coordinates into the computer. In the kitchen, Valencia eyes the tomato stain on the white floor.
Each second we spend not readjusting our trajectory, the shuttle moves farther and farther off course on every axis, X, Y, and Z. So if we change course in 1 minute...
Sam punches the coordinates into Octavia's computer and then the green key.
Attention all crew, we are shifting course. All crew needs to find seating and fasten their safety belts. Attention, all crew.
Among the mud and gloss, Marine straps herself to a red chair. In the kitchen, Valencia and Rosemary take their seats. Octavia's eyes fix on the computer spinning seconds. The purple outline of the shuttle display tumbles. Sam and Octavia strap themselves in. The shuttle quakes. Sounds of silverware clink in cabinets. Shoelace loops turn like clock hands. Octavia presses the green key.
And we are back on track. Anyone in danger?
Rosemary and Valencia escape their belts and hug. Marine stares at the glass bits. Octavia eyes Sam. Octavia releases the green key.
Co-pilot Sam.
Sam and Octavia unclick from their seats, meet before the starlit cabin window and shake hands.
Good work. Take a break.
I'm not going anywhere.
Sam returns to her chair and her needlework. In the kitchen, Valencia scrubs the tomato-stained floor. Rosemary reorganizes the scattered silverware.
I'm just waiting for signs and symbols. A picture from Mars of cave paintings. Something. A stack of rocks in a circle.
There's still 3 minutes before word of the ice creature reaches Earth. Proud to be spacefaring.
Jamaica Plain is crowded with parks. Solemn sidewalks sprout overgrown weeds, dandelion seeds scatter, blown away by stark winds and eager lungs that jones for a lonely playground. Tarmac heats discarded diapers and crumbled ice cream cones. The mother's belly swells. Her sleek hair parted, fake nails against tanned skin look costume under the too bright sun. In one hand, she holds a scratched flip phone. In the other, a Newport Plumes. Smoke stuck still in wavering heat. Ash falls quickly, sweat succumbs to her womb. Her children laugh and fight over swing set seats. Brother and sister, 5 and 7. The older sister has tangled dark hair and wears a shirt that says Manure Movers of America. She pushes her pudgy brother away. He runs past a woman in a yellow sun hat cutting melon for her baby and jumps toward monkey bars he can't reach. A baby boy with blonde curls and blue eyes washes sticky fingers in a fountain. His diaper bulges under bent knees. He tries to catch gusts of wind holding dead leaves under the fountain, watching in awe as they stick to his onesie the same way as the stickers from his coloring book. Pudgy Boy picks up a Dixie cup stained with fruit punch, fills it with water from the fountain, and drinks indulgently. Baby Blue Eyes is scooped up by the woman wearing a yellow sun hat. She rubs sunscreen over his pale body, bending him over her knees. He grabs her iPhone from her purse and flips through pictures of his favorite animals. Giraffe, lion, elephant. He giggles maniacally. Hippopotamus! Hippopotamus! The woman corrects him. No, that's an elephant. Smiling, she wipes discarded sunscreen on the bench she shares with the pregnant woman, whose son approaches. Waddling over with wet pants, he hears his mother's fuss over, "Who will get the goddamn Honda tonight?" His lips quiver in shame. His tight cargo shorts stained, hugging the muscles of his stocky legs. "Jesus Christ! Can't you tell me when you need to go to the bathroom?" Grunting, she tears off his shorts. He tries to grab onto her neck, but she resists, and his whole lower half is now sheathed only in oversized, yellow-stained briefs. Falls to the sun-baked bench. The woman in the yellow sun hat searches her purse for teething rings and snacks, handling Baby Blue a pretzel stick. She changes his diaper methodically. Bewildered, the baby watches the clouds float by. His sun hat-wearing mother looks down at her iPhone, where breaking news tells of a pregnant woman who's just had her baby stabbed out of her womb by a mother with 2 children. A cloud engulfs the sun. The mother removes her yellow sun hat and brings ice-cold hands to her sweating forehead. She chokes down a bottle of tepid water and grazes her baby's cheeks with shaking fingers. Baby Blue sucks on the pretzel stick, grating his only tooth against the grains of salt. Pudgy Boy has been pushed off the bench by his mother, who takes a pair of men's swim trunks out of her backpack. When she leans over to dress her son, the bags over her eyes dangle like empty pillows.
Stop crying!
A gust of wind blows fountain mist onto broken flower stems. Everyone stops and closes their eyes, except Baby Blue. Tall grass sways, singing harmoniously to the turbulent flow of Pudgy Boy's tears. Big Sis asks her mother, "What happened?" No answer. Bored, Big Sis pokes her brother's bulging stomach and he laughs. She offers her brother a cheese puff from a bag she stole from a disinterested day camper. Big Sis smiles, steals gum from her mother's bag. "Go, play on the swings," their mother chafes, and returns to her bench, her arm perched dangerously close to the hanging cargo shorts, folded over in shame. The smell of urine and tobacco slowly waft to Baby Blue, who waddles back to the fountain.
I closed my eyes and let the thought of nothing permeate my mind. I began to visualize nothing seeping into my external auditory canal and make its way to my cochlea for nerve contact. Maybe if I saw nothing hit the spiral cavity in my inner ear, then maybe my nerve impulses can respond. My nose then started to itch. I scratched my left nostril and then proceeded to scratch other parts of my face. I started with my chin, which inevitably led to other parts of my jawline, and somehow my hand made its way to my left shoulder. Nothing left somewhere between neck and collarbone. David, think of nothing. Meditate, I demanded myself. I thought maybe it'd be better to open my eyes and narrow in on a specific point as I meditate, as done in certain Zen Buddhist practices. Closed eyes supply an infinite amount of distraction points, I thought. Opening my eyes should certainly help. Then, eventually, when I can maintain focus with eyes wide open, I can channel that energy when my eyes are shut. So I looked straight ahead and narrowed in on a socket to the right of the altar. I saw nothing enter the scene through my peripheral. Nothing walked in sneakily and slipped into the left socket hole. It would appear that nothing looked to re-energize like myself, clearly exhausted from earlier before. Nothing disappeared behind the wall of the socket. I became fixated on what happened at the other side of the wall. Clearly, whatever happens behind that wall supplies a great source of power. It supplies enough energy to light this entire room. But I could only see what happens from this side, and so I let go of that thought. Time escaped me for a while as I stared at the manufactured crevice on the wall. But my tired eyes reminded me of time's existence. My mind drifted back to measures. I measured time between now and when I began. I preoccupied my thought with these tangible results because nothing felt too unbounded. And then I tried once again to refocus. Think about meditation. Think about nothing. Think about meditating. Think about nothing. Think about meditating. think about nothing. Think about meditating, 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 think about nothing. I hit a wall. I rose from the pillow, my only companion of the last 45 minutes. I stared at the bodhisattvas of compassion. I chanted her mantra almost every morning with the residents of Shimgum-do, the Buddhist monastery I've lived in for 4 months. The mantra is suggested for people whose minds cannot be quiet 1 minute or cannot concentrate for very long, for people like me. Thankfully, this bodhisattva is one that's forgiving. So she shouldn't be too disappointed by my failed attempt at meditating. Headmaster, on the other hand, not so much. I went to the kitchen where I knew I would find him and shared with him my endeavors. Nothing is all I tried to think about, I told him. Meditation and nothing. Nothing and meditation were all that consumed me, and I still don't think I meditated. You did meditation. You thought of nothing, he said with his mouth full of rice. I looked back to my thoughts and realized I did think of nothing, and nothing seemed vibrant. The headmaster abruptly stopped stirring the miso seaweed soup and shouted back, "Nothing, do not think."
Read Genesis, Act 4, Words in Water Jugs. Sam enters the kitchen and sits at the sky blue table. Valencia joins her. Sam points to the frozen plant on the screen.
Ever see anything like that before?
Rose says she has, diving with James Cameron. But that's really her story.
Have you?
I did my master's in Egypt. My task as a linguist was to identify objects on ancient maps. The pyramid was bigger than my apartment building. It was easy to get lost. One map led to a huge room full of water jugs. The water, of course, had evaporated in the heat, but the pyramid ceiling condensed the vapor to a mist and dripped the water back down. Sometimes drops would fall in the jugs, and the cycle would restart again.
It's the same water all this time.
It is.
Wow.
And I took one of these jugs out of the pyramid. At the time, everyone thought I was crazy, and they still may. I put the jug on a potter's wheel, okay?
Yes.
And at that moment, the jug stops being a jug and became a vinyl record. You understand?
No. But make me.
The ancient potter engraving it with a reed is not only recording the design he has in mind, but also the vibrations in the room. So for the first time, we heard a long-dead language of ancient Egypt spoken from the water jug.
What did it say?
They were ordering lunch.
Seriously?
They were ordering lunch. Fish. Our potter stopped spinning the jug when someone mentioned beer.
You hope to find jugs on Mars.
Yes, of course. They're really any artifact. A circle of stones would be a revelation. Of course, we would have to adjust the revolutions per second to Martian gravity to redo my experiment. My parents...
You have parents?
What do you mean?
I imagined you something like a root vegetable growing up, and then one day popped out of the ground.
Oh.
I mean it as a compliment, really. I can't imagine who your parents must have been.
But you can imagine them as radishes?
I'm an idiot. Anyways, your parents.
You steered us clear from the abyss. You're not an idiot.
It doesn't matter.
How do you think this will change Earth? Okay, so Martian creatures may not change how you like your eggs in the morning, but still...
I think we're standing on the corner of understanding ourselves and the universe in a new way. The sun orbiting a flat Earth were 2 corners we've already turned, and now we could say, of course! How stupid to think otherwise. And at this time as well, of course, there is or has been life on Mars, just as in Pompeii. But now, at this corner, we can only stare into mystery.
But won't this change God for people on Earth?
God, I'm sure, had a hand in Mars as well.
You know what I mean.
The human understanding of God, yes. If my life orbited a religion, I would run to it in this crisis of certainty. And once there, it may be a beautiful celebration. Perhaps life on Mars, even if what remains are only frozen fossils, is an example of how limited our thinking is, and that God's creation is therefore beyond the limit of our minds. Like with the vinyl jugs.
They weren't made from vinyl.
Oh, I know. But the experience of discovering something entirely new is but another drop of water into the ocean of our minds.
Does that mean I'm not special?
How can you ask me that?
I feel I can ask you everything.
Oh, wait!
Sam races away, exiting the kitchen. She returns with Valencia's completed afghan. Swirls of colour braid in thick yarn. Valencia brings a corner to her cheek.
Here, I'll show you where it'll be in my room.
Valencia feels between her fingers, the stringy yarn in her lap. Valencia rises and leads Sam away. Rosemary emerges from the walk-in freezer.
Sam, you wanted to see the inventory?
Rosemary finds no one and calls for dinner. In the kitchen, Marine and Rosemary serve and plate lasagna to the sky blue table.
Essentially, it is a pig that wants to be eaten. Instead of slaughtering a pig who in its last moments fears oblivion, this engineer pig will be aware of its death as a wonderful sacrifice to a godly life cycle.
Octavia enters.
I'm so happy pigs are off my menu.
Oh! Do you know Michelangelo?
Not personally. I've never been to Italy.
Michelangelo, laying with his crazy head against wooden scaffolding of the Sistine Chapel, his brain anchored to his back, asked his food servants to only bring him bacon. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
How do you know this?
I don't. It's a joke. What I mean is, no matter how lovely something is, if you are hungry, you should eat it.
Even if it is your wife?
Or son?
Listen, my friends, I'm not talking Greek tragedy here. I'm talking real life. There is a threshold for hunger, where in your mind, there is no society, only organized food. Is she talking about bacon again? I've got to hand it to you. For a genius, you are totally crazy.
She told me that during restoration work on the Sistine Chapel, forensic scientists identified pig grease everywhere. Rosemary told me, that man loved bacon, or perhaps a larger statement was being made.
Rose, you're absolutely right.
The crew faces Octavia. Rose stops serving dinner.
No, not about this bullshit. Right now, I am so hungry that I may eat you, so let's do this. Marine?
If. Okay, all is right. This will be our final dinner together before we land on Mars. It has been an honor to work and live with you beautiful humans. Even if the line between genius and psychopath blurs at Octavia's hunger or Rose's conspiracy theories. Tonight, to Octavia, a great pilot, and to life on Mars.
The crew cheers, drinks, and eats.
3 years together, I saved this recipe for our last supper. My great-grandmother's lasagna. She was born and died in the same bed, in the same house. And here her lasagna is, now in the gravity field of Mars.
Between lines. Running my thumb along shuffled book corners, I reflect upon absences. The absence of inspiration, the absence of my words from 2/3 of these lined pages. The pockets of air between leaves of paper that whiffle out a sound like hummingbird wings as my thumb on page edges separates and reunites the still blank leaves. The paper's effort to force air out. The hollow that forms a cup, a room, a you, that makes possible cup and touch and vacuum. I could fill this cup and vanish any form of emptiness, but a cup needs concavity to bear that name. My hands need gaps to claim fingers. I'm more familiar with the spaces between my fingerprints, the unprintables, the crevices uninked that allow for my identity. After all, my finger gaps equip me to hold a pen, and with the pen I can create another inked identity. without that, I'm left looking at my fingerprints, wishing instead I could name myself with words. But for now, the imprint is blank, the pen is full, the hand is still, the inspiration flits out of sight.
Fated mistake. India and I find one of her old white bedsheets and dye it. We are in her backyard, and falling pollen mixes with the bright blues and browns and pinks in bubbling buckets of dye. We stretch the sheet like a trampoline, and vivid splotches swirl across. It's as if our pupils have developed more color receptors. Browns bolder than tree bark, pinks and oranges juicier than citrus. Dye dripping, drawing new veins on our arms. We leave the sheet outside to let it dry. We wash our bodies, the dye melting into our skin, and I tell her I will return the next day to pick it up. She asks if she should run it through the wash, since the smell of dye is overwhelming, and I want to use the sheet for decoration. I tell her that she should. I come back the next day, and the dye on the sheet is muted from machine washing. All of the colors have faded together. They look more like birthmarks, paled from age, distant craters embracing. I think of leaf fossils fading on sidewalk. She says we can fix it. We take bleach to it, spray it, and slosh it over the stretched out sheet. Our minds race against the effects of the bleach, and we feel despondent. In a few hours, we see the results. The bleach has turned the sheet completely back to white in some places. Parts of the green painted porch underneath are paled by bleach. Oh no. She twists a ringlet of flaxen hair in one finger and gets a briefcase of inks from her father's studio. We splatter the ink around the bleached spots. She gets some acrylic paints from her room. Gold and black, beige and white. Squeezing the tubes onto a hard shell of plastic, we paint thin mountains like wavelengths across the sheet. Then we move our wrists in circular formations to make individual planets. The dye is no longer distinguishable, but that is no longer the point. We have created our own sparkling nebula. This mystical fabric hangs off India's porch, blown dry by the wind. The grass underneath eats gleaming drops of color. The sun embraces our stained hands. Light, shining through the sheet, illuminates the dyes hidden underneath. In the darkness, it's a secret only India and I know.
Wax escapes flame, pooling around unwatched candles. Heat mutates solid to liquid. What was once a candle is now a puddle, pooling, dripping, sticking. It suffocates its victim, a finger, molding to its form, melting, preserving it to a catatonic state, an impenetrable shell. Don't get wax on the coffee table. My uncle's hair has started to turn gray. He has a defined nose and an Adam's apple, sharp features that delineate his body like a constellation. His skin is rusted, worn from sun, the texture of sandpaper. His crow's feet crease when he says, "It will be impossible to get off the wood." He struggles, opening a bottle of port wine. He drinks a goblet full every night after dinner. Tonight, he watches nervously, picking lint off the couch as my cousins and I melt old candle wax over a fire and lay out sheets of newspaper to catch dribbles. Pinks and blues become purple atop the flame and combine into a metal bowl. My uncle warns us again and tells us to be patient so that the candles form a cylinder. He spins his wrists slowly with the unfaltering precision of his instrumentalist's fingers. This is how we should spin the wax. Our eyes roll and sink. He pours himself another goblet of wine, watching us play with the fire, poking and prodding the burning log in the furnace. My 2 cousins have done this before, so I let them lead the way. Though I am 18, I have never made candles before. The discarded candle wax becomes liquid before our eyes. It settles over as a film. The harder clumps look like icebergs melting. Emmanuel's blonde hair hasn't yet turned brown like his older brother's. He stirs the mixture with a wooden spoon, and when he pulls the spoon out, it has a coat of wax over it. A second skin. It is cool enough to leave an imprint without burning a finger, but not cool enough to crack under pressure. We take yarn and fold it in half as if to make a necklace. Catching the hot wax with his new skeleton, Emmanuel drips wax over his exposed thighs. He cries out in pain, forgetting what's in his hand. Wax splatters on a tile. We all remain silent so as to not alert Uncle, who is on his 3rd goblet of port. Our giggles nearly escape our closed noses. The first layer is complete. The second layer comes only after the first one cools. This is the rule. Our arms become tired, and the hot wax threatens to betray the cylindrical form. We so badly want them to conform. They look more like monster fingers than candles you might see at a church or a restaurant. The dribbling is explosive. Candle wax splatters on the floor tiles. Our hands become tired from holding this yarn, which becomes heavier with every layer. My uncle is furious, but we are all laughing, lighting our monster fingers, and walking in a procession, a marriage of fingers to wax.
Red Genesis, Act 5. Inside, looking out. Rubber tire threads spin over Martian ice like bikes on white wrapping paper. Space Shuttle Hosea landed on Mars with no problems. Thereafter, Octavia napped. Something she sacrificed in her 3-year vigil as pilot. Rosemary was thrilled to use what resembled a proper toilet. Marine was busy transplanting plants and organs, splicing DNA and combining forces with Martian greenhouse workers. The night before landing on the northern polar ice cap of Mars, Valencia asked Sam why she made an Afghan for each crew member, but not for herself. Sam searched the floor for an answer when Valencia kissed her, locked the door and brought her to see Mars from her window, as beautiful as herself. They were both late for dinner and the crew suspected why. Nothing of this event was spoken. On Mars, Valencia clutched her husband, Martian Director of Interplanetary Linguistic Research, like a young orangutan. He drove the snowmobile. Sam could not see the director's face under his thick goggles, frozen beard, and sub-zero coat. She would not have looked if given the chance. Sam clutched her own snowmobile driver, a silent man who, the director had explained, had taken a vow of silence after seeing what lies in the frozen cavern. The rust-orange sky gave the Martian ice a soft pink glow like the stains brought on by the Cat in the Hat. The director explained that volcanoes don't always explode in the way you may think. Sometimes gas cannot burst through the magma and finds another way through weak rocks. This explosion caused the cavern in question. The 2 snowmobiles skidded to a stop. A 3-story flower of ice bent petals of rock. This was the opening. The director said this was one of thousands of volcanic caverns. This opening spurred bees in the imagination of Sam, but she took on the silent man's vow, out of uncertainty. Snow crunched under footsteps. Since the night before with Mars and the big everything, Valencia had not looked at Sam again. Sam realized she had never been further from home. Down in the cavern, rows of icy teeth lined the ceilings. The thickness of the roof was reflected in the sunlight, glowing through like stained glass. The ceiling sloped from 20 feet to 5 and then 1. Crawling, Sam spat out mouthfuls of snow from the silent man's kicking feet. This tunnel of frozen water ended. The ceiling rose, and here was an American flag, staked into the cavern floor. There was no wind. This huge room fed to several icy corridors. That was clear. But the director saluted the flag and continued to a small dark tunnel. Valencia saluted the flag, as did the silent man. No one stopped to see Sam look at the limp cloth and pass on by. Flashlights bounced off ancient ocean walls. The silent man lifted Sam to her feet and shined a light at the wall. Engraved in the ice with surreal clarity was a diagram, perhaps of a solar system, perhaps an atom, perhaps both. Spheres linked themselves in ovals around a massive sphere. Sam approached this wall and shone her flashlight in the engravings. She saw no end. The director cleared his throat. All flashlights spotted him. A long, pointed, fish-like thing was frozen in his arms. Valencia nearly smashed it with her flashlight. It was a horror, with many eyes like bullet wounds in flesh. At last, the director turned, placed the horror on a massive shelf and climbed up 3 icy steps in long rectangular prisms. The crew followed. Blinding light reflected off stacks of metal sheets, each the size of a pillow. The director presented a sheet to Valencia, the silent man, and to Sam. Printed on the sheets were engravings no larger than the freckles on Octavia's nose. Each sheet was fully printed. Both sides had no margins. Valencia turned to Sam. The silent man pushed Sam aside and took the lead as the crew exited the site. The director followed, then Valencia, then Sam. Carrying these tablets in the belly of Mars, Valencia slipped Sam a penned note from her yellow legal pad. It read, "Wait and see."